as a zookeeper, which actually was pretty good preparation for activism. It's true. It's totally true. One of the things you're taught right away when you start working with dangerous animals is the scariest animal is a parent protecting its child, and that's just a rule throughout nature. It's not just in zoos. Every animal in every environment anywhere in the world knows it. It's not about size. It's a question of motivation. And parents protecting their children bring an energy to that blows every other force out of the water. And when you see animals working together, they're almost always doing it to protect children. When you see animals hunting, they're bringing food back to their children. It's the most primal instinct that every creature has. And we're in a democracy, and as a culture, the function of our government is largely so we can protect our children. It's about providing a safe environment for children to grow up, making sure all their needs are met, and it's how our society is supposed to function. It's supposed to be our guiding light. And obviously we stray from that on a regular basis, and the war on drugs has been awful for this country on many levels. But it's worth noting that it was originally sold to us largely as a method of parents protecting children from drugs. If you listen to Nixon describing why we need this war on drugs, it's so that parents can protect their children from these horrible drugs. When you hear Nancy Reagan bringing back the whole just say no thing, same thing. It's always been this argument. And obviously there's other factors. We've got the prison industrial complex, we've got the DEA, we've got big pharmaceutical companies. There's lots of things lots of forces trying to keep this plant from being legalized. But I think many of you have gone to the same types of meetings that I have, where a local jurisdiction tries to regulate this plant, and activists show up along with people that we sometimes refer to as haters, who are trying to keep the plant illegal. It's not big pharmaceutical companies showing up to these meetings. It's parents, and you'll get a bunch of activists that show up, and often, some of us reek of weed, and we get very worked up, screaming about the government, and we make a lot of very good points, but as a group, we don't necessarily lobby that well. And then it takes, a couple soccer moms that just kind of walk in and basically treat us all like props of what happens when you smoke too much weed, and it's incredibly powerful, and they kind of carry the day, and they have for decades, and that's been the deal. And our side, we go up and we use these war metaphors, and we describe this like it's a war. And I don't like war. I hate war. I'm a very peaceful person, and so when I hear war metaphors being used to describe our fight, it's always been a turn-off to me. I don't get riled up when people use those metaphors. But in recent years, I've kind of changed my opinion on this, and it's not that this is metaphorically a war, it's literally a war, and it's a civil war, and that's what's been denied in our media. We don't cover it. We hear about the deaths in Afghanistan, not enough, but we hear about them. Imagine what it would be like if every day when you turn on the news, they covered the prisoners of the drug war. They mentioned how many people we locked up for how long, how much that's going to cost. This country locks up more of its citizens than any other country on earth. Anytime we feel all high and mighty about American freedoms, we need to remember that. We are locking up more of our citizens than any country ever has in history. And that's almost entirely this drug war. And so I want to move forward now and talk about what I think is changing. And if you study war, and I don't like war, but I do study war, there actually is, history repeats itself, and there's a pretty clear pathway to peace when you have a civil war. And what we're looking at now is basically a long-term stalemate, to the point that it's been going on for so long, most people have forgotten that we're even in a civil war. And historically, there's only a few things that can break a stalemate like that in a civil war, and it's new alliances. And throughout history, that's been the deal. There's long-term standoffs until new alliances form. And that's what I really think is the significant part about the new pediatric applications. It's the fact that we now have new allies. And bottom line, we now have soccer moms. And we have soccer moms protecting their children. And that's the most powerful force in politics. Now, the community that I'm very proud to say I'm from are growers and pot dealers and patients. And, you know, being real, we're basically the modern day version of bootleggers and, they call them scofflaws. And those were not the dudes that legalized alcohol. So they're just not. It's not a character flaw that we're bad lobbyists, but we're bad lobbyists. And that's okay. And, it's been a problem for a long time, but I feel like it's no longer a problem because we have the best lobbyists on earth now. We have parents protecting their children. And so what I would really like to do is kind of spell out the alliance that I see forming and get some, because really the key to an alliance working is agreed upon goals. We don't have to all get along, we don't have to agree with each other, we have to agree on some basic goals. And I have two basic goals that I would like to spell out. And the first one is getting this medicine to everybody that needs it. And we won't know peace in this war until that's the case. And I don't just mean Michigan and California and Canada, I mean Texas, I mean Alabama, I mean Africa, I mean China, I mean everywhere. And it feels like victory is pretty close in some ways, but when you expand the goal out to other countries and the parts of the world that are going to be very slow to accept this, we're still a long way off. There's a long fight ahead. And as Americans, we have a moral responsibility to do this because we're the ones that bullied the whole world into banning these plants. And so we have to be the one that bullies them into bringing them back into the supply. So, given how far off that is, this is going to be very hard. And some of us are going to be in jail when we finally achieve that goal. I might be in jail when we finally achieve that goal. And so there's a second goal that really needs to happen. And we won't really know peace until we've freed the prisoners. Yeah. And that two-pronged approach, I think, is how we're going to really be able to end this war once and for all. Once everybody has medicine and all the prisoners are free, the war is truly over. So that's my vision for peace in this, awful, awful war. But I think we're close. We just, like everyone is saying tonight, if we can just work together, this can really work. And so thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to present the award, the words for CBD production. The number 3, hold on, let me get these out. So the third place is LP9 from Chalice Dr. Seeds. Is that person in the... All right, give him a round of applause. Make sure I give you the right one. There you are. Congratulations. Number 2 is Canatonic number 4, a Chalice Dr. Seeds. You got to come back up. You've been doing some really good work on that. Good job, buddy. And number 1. Yes. Are these all the same?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They're all the tins.
So. Number 1 is a Canatonic 4 by Casper. Is Casper here?
Casper.
Congratulations.
Thank
you for all your good work.
There's a matching one with, you have to match up the ID number with his ID number on his tin.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Stay there.
Let me make sure I get the right one. 75. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Do you...
75. Here you are, sir.